Hello, happy Monday, everyone. I see there are a few of you guys already that have logged on. So, I like to see who's here. So, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and say I'm here just so I know who I'm speaking with. We're going to get started in just a second. I hope everyone is enjoying this Monday. I thought it would be helpful. So by day, I'm a professor. So this is my spring break. So I have a little bit more flexibility this week. So I'm going to be doing a couple of videos here and there, just randomly based off of different things you guys have put on Meetup. So when you joined the group, there was a question asking what you were hoping to get out the group. So I actually look at those to get an idea of what topics need to be discussed. So if you did not get a chance to do that, feel free to message me. And like I said before, if you have any questions, any comments, as I'm sharing information with you, go ahead and put it in the chat. The chat should be active. So I'm going to do a little test here. So if you see that, go ahead and let me know. But and let's get started. Let's get started, everyone. So if you can hear me okay, if you have any issues hearing me, just go ahead and let me know. All right. Okay, so today's topic is how to silence the mental noise after an abusive relationship. How to silence the mental noise. Hi, Kristen. Good to see you. I'm going to really share what I did to silence the mental noise. And really, what that means is how to find peace. When you're in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, a psychopath, a sociopath, a controlling, abusive, manipulative person, there is no peace. There is absolutely no peace. And how many of you guys in here at one point have really sat to yourself, maybe through tears, maybe when no one else was there around, what could hear you, and you said, if I could just have peace. That's all I want is peace, because that is the main thing that is removed from you when you're in an abusive relationship. One thing that I learned about myself was that I was so concerned and so really into protecting the marriage that became my number one priority. My peace wasn't a concern. I wanted to make sure that I can control how the outside looked at me, because I was a wife of a minister. So how would it look if I left the marriage? How would it look if I spoke up about how I was being treated, how unhealthy the relationship was? How would that look if my family knew I didn't have any money? That put so much money into education, but I didn't have anything to show for it. How would it look if they knew that I was crying just about every day? So I became very consumed with those thoughts, and those thoughts overrode the fact that I needed to get out, that I was in an unhealthy situation, that my mental health was deteriorating. So one of the things I learned is that, and feel free to chime in if you can relate, I could be in my home, and the moment I heard the garage door open, the doorknob, open up, and I knew that he was coming in, I began to feel anxious. I had a lot of thoughts running through my mind of where was he? Where has he been? What's going to happen? Are we going to argue? Just immediately, my whole body would tense up. So if you can relate to that, let me know if you can relate to that. It was a very terrible feeling, and I couldn't understand what it was. There were moments when he would say, oh, I'm going to go to the store, and he would be gone for hours and hours. That later on, that became a trigger of mine. I found that out later on. But during those moments of being with him, there was so much mental noise. There was no quiet because there were always arguments, always worries or concerns. Um, I have a toddler, many of you guys know, but I was the only one taking care of the toddler, right? And I felt like I couldn't ask for help because how would it look if I were to say, can someone help me so I can go out and just go grocery shopping or just have the day to myself when my partner was at home? How would that look? So I just took it on. I just took all of that on myself. And it was in the moment when we were in between moving, and I'm giving a background story for a reason. We were in between moving from one state to another that I found myself and my son essentially homeless. We were homeless for 7 months, moving from family to family. If the post office were to ask, what was your permanent address? I couldn't give any information because I didn't have one. People were talking about us, right? So there was a lot of noise. It was because people were starting to figure out something was wrong. How many of you guys have had that happen when the outside starts to figure out, okay, something is not what it seems? And I had so much mental noise because all I thought was, people are figuring this out. How is this going to look? And I'm getting back to that. How is this going to look? That was all I cared about. Because if there was nothing else I can control how we were viewed to the outside world. But in all of that, I had no peace. I had issues sleeping. How many of you guys have had issues sleeping? One thing, I don't know who's listening in who was married to one or still married to one, but I'm going to drop this information here that many of you guys may not know. If you're married or in a relationship with a narcissist, they are notorious for disrupting your sleep. So if that has happened to you, you're actually not crazy. They are notorious for disrupting your sleep. If you're sleeping, then it has something to do with the mental noise, the PTSD, right? They might turn on every light while you're sleeping. They might make a lot of extra noise, to wake you up. Maybe it's in the middle of the night and now they want to talk about something. Now they want to apologize or admit something to you, but they are notorious for disrupting sleep. So that's important to remember. So when I removed myself from my ex, even though I was staying with family members, the first thing I noticed was that it was quiet. I went from staying with his family to moving with my family before I then got my own place and got back on my feet. But the one thing I noticed is that I didn't have any quiet when I was in the marriage. I was able to go no contact even with the child while we were getting things together. And I know many of you guys cannot. But in the earlier moments when I couldn't, I had to go gray rock. One of the other, in gray rock, if you're not aware of what that is when you're very bland. You don't give them any emotion. You don't give them anything to feed off of. So in those moments, I started to realize when I was away from him, away from his family, away from all of that, I started to realize I wasn't taking care of myself at all. I was always a very active person. I'm really into fitness. I stopped working out. I was eating junk food all the time. And how many of you guys know that your mental health and your physical health, that all plays a part, right? I wasn't taking care of myself. My life began to be just a blur. So it was in that moment I became intentional and I started doing very little things like going on a walk. I would put my son in a stroller and we would just go on walks around the neighborhood, just taking laps. And I was able to clear my mind a bit. I was never able to do that because it was a lot of, where are you going? What are you doing? Feeling guilty if I were away from home too long, although the ex was away from home all the time, but I felt very guilty if I were away from home for too long. Can anyone relate to that? Feeling controlled, feeling like your every move was being watched. So just taking a stroll around the neighborhood began to give me peace. Another thing I started to do is I began to surround myself with people who were not judging me for staying in that relationship, who were not telling me, I told you so, because you don't need to hear that in those moments. I began to remove myself from people. I also took a social media break. At this time, my ex was on social media, and like I told you guys in the beginning, that story was very private because I wanted everyone to think we were in a great relationship, and he knew that. So he went online to tell everyone we were getting a divorce before I even told my parents, right? So it was very easy in that moment to engage, to go back and forth on social media. Everyone was responding to me and calling me, as you can imagine. I just shut off social media. That was another part of finding that quiet, shutting that mental noise and worrying about what other people thought. I had to physically cut back on social media. How many of you guys in here know that social media is a big way for people to keep tabs on you? And not just your partner or your ex, but oftentimes they operate in groups, right? They call it the flying monkeys. So it could be their family who are watching your social media. I was on YouTube. I had people he was dating were watching my YouTubes and commenting, harassing. I had to shut all of that down until I began to work on my mental health, on my peace. Because one of the things in a narcissistic relationship, in an abusive relationship, they know that if they leave you alone long enough for you to really internally reflect, you're going to find the strength and the courage to leave. They know that. And that is a fear of theirs. So what they do is they don't give you any alone time. They smother you. So if you just had a big blowout and you're upset and you want to leave, they might call you nonstop. They might force you to sit and talk to them until they feel the issue has been resolved, even though they were the one who created the issue. They'll make you sit, which is mental abuse. It's definitely a tactic to control and confuse the victim. But I've had clients tell me they've sat for hours arguing back and forth with the narc. Maybe they found out they were cheating on them, or they found out something negative, but they flipped it on you and made you, basically back up your emotions. And then you might have even found yourself apologizing for that. So a part of finding that peace was no longer engaging, no longer trying to prove or explain to that person. It could be a parent, it could be whoever's abusive. You don't have to explain to them why you feel the way you do, because they're going to gaslight you. They're going to manipulate you. They're going to flip the situation. And it makes you feel invalidated. It makes you feel like you're not important. It further re-victimizes you and traumatizes you. So removing yourself, one, I said removing yourself from that relationship, going on walks. Two, removing yourself from social media if you need to. Some of us need to. Surrounding yourself with supportive people, that's three. And then four, if you need to block some people, to remove some people for your peace, that is fine. And you do not need to explain why. When I left, I had his family members would constantly message me saying, you guys can work it out. You can get back together. You can pray about it. You can do all of this stuff. And prayer was a big trigger for me because I was the wife of a minister and it was manipulated so many times. So I actually had to block some people from social media, from my phone, for my mental health. I stopped caring about how they would feel if I blocked them. And I started caring more about what do I need to do to get to a place of peace. How many of you guys can relate to that? And I know for many of us, it's very difficult to do, especially if that family member of the abusive person is being nice, right? It has been supportive, but they're still kind of doing or saying things that triggers you or takes you back to that moment, or you find yourself defending why you left or why you want to leave or why you're upset. And that does a lot to you as well. You should never have to explain why you feel the way you feel about being abused, about being mistreated. You don't have to explain that to anyone. So if that means you need to block some people, and it can't even be your own family member, maybe you're on your second divorce or your third divorce, and maybe it's your, third or fourth relationship, and you're hearing people say, well, why can't you choose the right person? Or, maybe you cut people off too fast, or whatever the issue is. You have to eliminate that outside noise because a lot of that outside noise contributes to the mental noise. And when you're on the search for peace, you have to figure out a way to begin to trust your inner thoughts and to also do a tracking of them to make sure that they're not the thoughts that you've been hearing from your abuser or people who've mistreated you. Understanding that being in that relationship is a mind warp, is very confusing, is very frustrating. A lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people will encourage you to stay, especially if you have children. And especially if there's no physical abuse, and a lot of people really feel like anything can be worked out if it's not physical, and that's not true. Understanding what works for you and not backing down just because you feel that you're being told to do something you don't want to do. You're being pressured to do something. For some of you, finding your pieces is journaling. For other of you, it might be listening to music. For some people, it might be going on YouTube, joining support groups like this, and hearing from other people that you are valid in your feelings, that what you've gone through was terrible and that you're not alone. Sometimes we need to hear that. And for those of you who are watching in, if you have not had a chance to attend any of the other webinars, I can't see who's here, but I do see you guys are here. One thing about myself that I always share is that I'm a behavioral health professional. I am a victim advocate, and I was still abused. So I understand as a healthcare worker, all sides of it. I get all sides of it, and I also get that many of us as healthcare workers don't get it. Many of our family just don't get it. We're coming out of these relationships with PTSD, with complex PTSD, with depression, with anxiety. So of course that's going to cause a mental noise and mental anguish. Of course that's going to make you feel, did I make the right decision? And some of you may even still love that person. But understanding that making peace with the fact that the person you fell in love with or that person who's a parent to you or a family member is not showing love. And that's why we end up in these situations, because our feelings are genuine, but we're not getting the genuine feelings in return. But our brain can't make sense of that. So we stay and we try to make it work. But the longer you stay, the further away you get from your peace. How many of you guys in here, and if it applies to any of you, how many of you guys have been able to move away? Have been able to maybe go no contact or low contact. You're not in the physical place anymore. And maybe you notice that, and I was saying this in one of my courses last week, many people who leave, particularly the abusive marriages or relationships, find that their credit score increases over time, their finances get better. Which is all a part of peace as well. Like finances are directly related. If you don't have any money, it stresses you out. And many of us did not realize that our finances were being drained in these relationships. We were paying so much money for so many things, covering them because they're pretty bad at money usually. They have a lot of habits, a lot of cheating, whatever it is. And we're looking at our bank account saying, why can't I keep my money? Where is my money going? When you get out of that and you begin to heal, I can almost assure you that your finances begin to get better. As you go much towards peace, that's all energy. It's all energy. And people like that who are abusive and controlling, they block that. They block that energy from us. So if you have any questions, like I said, there is a question here. Give me a second. Let me see here. For those of you who don't feel comfortable putting information in the chat, I'm also looking at the Meetup app. I'm looking at the direct messages, so feel free to comment. So let's see here. Okay, do you feel that your behavioral health program taught enough about emotional abuse, or that domestic abuse can be emotional? So that's a great question. So in the behavioral health program that I was in, we went over the different types of abuse: the verbal, the physical, the financial, the spiritual, right? Um, all of those aspects. But what I found in my program is that for the court system to qualify a lot of things as domestic violence, it was physical abuse. And that was the most frustrating thing, because emotional is very hard to prove. And a lot of times I've heard judges say, well, that's just marital discord, that's just, them not getting along. And it's very hard to prove emotional abuse. But one thing that I would do is I would fight and I would show, okay, this is what's happening. If you're constantly cheating on your partner, that is emotional abuse. That is what it is. And I think that we as a society are becoming more understanding of what verbal abuse is and the impacts of that, how it is just as heavy, if not worse, a lot of times than physical. Yes, physical, we can see it. And, physical is very in your face and you see the bruises. But that verbal abuse, that mental abuse, that spiritual and emotional and financial, those are huge. So this is one thing I did when I began mentoring others and coaching others. And in the Healing Loudly course, I talk specifically about the impacts of emotional abuse and how they are very damaging and just as damaging as physical. And actually work with domestic violence agencies to push that as well, because it's very, and you guys might have known this, it's swept under the rug, right? We sweep that under the rug, but that emotional abuse is very, very detrimental. That was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Are there any other questions before, as I wrap this up? Any other questions or any other things that you want me to clarify a bit more? Feel free to put in the live chat or include it in the Meetup app. As you're doing this, I challenge you to really take a moment and think, what is it that you do to find peace of mind? What does that look like for you? What does peace look like for you? For some people, it might be sleeping in a little bit extra longer. For others, it might be waking up and just not feeling badly that day. For others, it just might be one day not crying. It doesn't have to be anything drastic or anything major. It could be something very, very small. What does peace look like to you? And what are you willing to do to get into that place of peace? How valuable is that to you? I didn't know how valuable it was until I didn't have it. Are you more concerned about it? Are you like me and you were more concerned about how others felt about you? Or did you not care about that? You just wanted to have a healthy family, but just never could quite get there because you were with someone who kept fighting against it. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's, you want a great relationship with a parent or a sibling, but they're very toxic or abusive or controlling. What are you willing to do to keep your peace? And these are questions that you have to ask yourself, really. But sometimes we have to be comfortable understanding that we may need to remove ourselves until we're strong enough to be back in the presence of those people. For some of us, we never want to be around them. But for many of you, maybe it is a spouse or ex-spouse you share a child with, or a parent or a sibling or a grandparent, or someone who you just can't cut off. What are you willing to do to strengthen yourself until you're able to set firm boundaries and let them know, I'm not putting up with this anymore. My peace is valued and valuable. So if there are no other questions, there are no other comments in here, I want to thank you guys all for watching in. Like I said, this week I have a bit of a down week, so I'll be doing a little bit more I'll be doing a little bit more of these as we go along. So make sure, if you have not watched any of the other videos I've been putting up, and remember, I'm doing this platform on YouTube. Before I used to do live Zooms, but a lot of people were telling me I didn't get a chance to really hear everything. A lot of people want to share, which is fine. I'm creating a space for that soon. But sometimes you just need to hear information. I know a lot of you guys are in the fact-finding stage. So sometimes you just need to be educated on what it was you went through and to be motivated. Sometimes you just need motivation. So go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you like this as well. I'm going to post this in the meetup group. Also, for those of you who are past the fact-finding stage and you're looking to do some work on yourself, check out the Thursday classes that I hold. I don't know if I have someone in here. I don't know if you're in here today, so you can comment if you are. But we've been doing amazing work, and it's been amazing growth, and it's amazing to see. But this is when you're out of the fact-finding stage and you're ready to work on you. And I know that takes some time. It took me a year to get to that point. So for some of you, it might take some time. Also, we are going to start moving to having, if you're in Houston area, soon we're going to do some in-person meetups. So that's going to be happening soon. And also, those of you who are not in Houston, but who want to have more support group type settings, and you can talk to other survivors and maybe have it facilitated, we're going to have a special section for that. Like I said, the group is growing very fast. I'm only one person, but we will have a specific membership for that particular thing. I want to be able to help as much as I possibly can. And I know the pain. And I say this all the time, and I don't think I can say it enough. I know the pain of being with a narcissist. I know the fear. I know the anxiety. I know the stress. I know the grief. I know people have contemplated suicide. I've done that before. I know the pain, but there is a way to get out of that. There is a way to rewire your brain, because that's what they were doing. It was a lot of brainwashing. So I don't want to end just yet. I see that there are a few people who are messaging me, so I want to make sure that I address that. So guys, give me 1 second. Okay, that's not the question. I'll respond to that later. Okay. And for those of you who are sending specific things to me, I'll write to you specifically. I'll write to you specifically, so that's not a problem. But thank you guys so much for listening in. Like I said, if there's someone who you feel could benefit from this, also share it. A lot of us just don't know what we dealt with, and we don't have the information. So I'm excited for all the things that we're going to do in this group. I'm so excited for you guys to be here, and we are going to get through this together. We're going to get through this together. So everyone have a great Monday.